Welcome along to episode 3 of Life Off the Stage with me, Richard Beauvoisin. Had an amazing guest today, someone I've known for a long, long time, over 20 years in fact, from back in our days in Oxford. Hope you enjoy it. My guest today is a multi-continental teacher, Reverend, my first open dance partner and a lover of all things fast. I'll explain that more later. She's one of the reasons that Sir in the West Country was able to get off the ground with her amazing attitude and work ethic in the early days of Sir Swindon back in the day. Today on Life Off the Stage is the amazing Sarah Patten. Welcome along, Sarah.
Oh, thank you. That was
I
so
know.
nice.
It's quite weird, isn't it? It does feel a little bit like This Is Your Life or Desert Island Discs moment. And
Yeah, it does feel a bit like that. And I mean, it's been ages since we've had a proper conversation because I've been overseas for so much.
you have. Now, like every other guest that I've had on, I do internet stalk my guests. And yet I realised it was an 11-year period that you were over in New Zealand for. That's a hell of a journey.
I know. And in that time, I went from being single to married with kids and a qualified Sarok teacher. So
And
that was
obviously,
quite a lot
obviously
to
you
pack
prefer
in.
being, sorry, obviously you prefer being married with kids rather than being single. That's the right way round, of course.
They're both good lives. They are both good lives. I would never not being single because I love being single, but I also love being married. So we're two different things.
Oh, that sounds good. It does sound good. So yes, so for those that don't know, I've known Sarah for a long, long time. She was my very first open dance partner back in Hammersmith Palais. But first of all, tell us a little bit more about yourself, where you grew up, and all of that type of stuff, Sarah.
So I grew up in the UK, all over the place. Was born in Dorset. We lived in Cornwall. We moved to Yorkshire, and then I went to oh no, Marmite Mug. Really?
Marmite mug, yes.
Want to be Vegemite, mate? Where
No,
I'm
I'm a
coming
lover of
from there.
Marmites.
So then I spent time in Blackpool, Heart of Ballroom Dancing, Oxford, London, all over the UK basically.
What made you
Um,
move around so much then?
Well, we moved with my dad's job a couple of times, and then I moved to university, to two different universities, London and Liverpool and Oxford. Then I went to work in Blackpool, then I went to work in London, and then I went back to train in Oxford, and then back to London. So yeah, just I quite like moving.
So what's been your favourite place to live then?
Oh, it has to be New Zealand.
New
Um,
Zealand. Okay, we'll get on to New Zealand in a minute then. So New Zealand trumps the UK.
there are good bits about both of them,
Fair
really
enough.
good.
Fair enough. So what made you move over to New Zealand then?
So I'd been what we call a curate in a church in London, and I was looking for a job, and I saw a great job advertised, which I thought initially was Auckland, as in Durham, Bishop Auckland up in Durham, but in very small letters along the bottom it said Auckland, New Zealand,
Yeah.
which I was a little bit surprised about. But it was such a great job, I decided to apply, and somewhat to my surprise, they offered me the job. So having not planned to go work overseas, it was almost an accident that I did.
Blimey, it's a fair old commute from the UK to New Zealand. So yeah, for those that don't know, I first met Sarah back in Oxford and spent many an hour rehearsing in Oxford University, um, practicing dancing. I have a very strange memory actually of practicing the Dirty Dancing lift with you, Sarah. I'm gonna come clean right now in regards that for those that don't know how to do the Dirty Dancing lift, the only way in which you can practice it initially is for the lead, the man. It normally would have to be a man for the Dirty Dancing lift, to lay on his back, and then what the lady has to do is kind of climb on top of the man, and then the man has to kind of position his hands and then push up like this and kind of get the balance point. And yeah, I was thinking to myself, so I'm in what's the official? I was going to say a church college, or what is
And
the
yeah, it was at Oxford College. So
Yeah, Oxford College, and I was thinking I'm laying on the floor in a religious type place, and I'm pushing a potential vicar up and down like this, and it just all felt very wrong, if I'm honest with you. But those were
oh,
the
look,
days.
that's probably not the funniest thing that happened while I was at training at theological college. A friend of ours, Nick, who interestingly first took me to Sir in Oxford, where I met you that first night.
Yeah, yeah.
we entered a dirty dancing competition run by one of the local venues and won. And then I had this trophy, which I couldn't really put up in my room to say that I'd won a dirty dancing competition while training to be a vicar. So that went in a drawer.
Ah, do you still have it?
I don't think I do. All
Ah,
my trophies got nicked, actually.
oh no.
It was the weirdest thing. I was in the middle of a house move and I had a lot of stuff packed in boxes, and I had 2 boxes of precious things that were separate, and they mysteriously went missing during one of the moves. So
Ah,
I know it's a bit gutting, really.
ah, that is a shame. That is a shame because it's they're not worth anything to anybody else.
No, exactly.
So yeah, if I go back to my go-karting trophy that I have for when I ruined my back that time, I still hold that trophy with lots of pleasure and pride. It does sit at the back of my wardrobe, gaining dust now. I haven't put it out on the side necessarily, but it's not worth anything to anybody else. But there we go. So how long were you in New Zealand for? Remind me again.
So 11 years,
Right.
running quite a large church out there with a huge community outreach. So we'd have maybe 1,000 people through the church in a week to all the different programs and bits and pieces. It was an amazing time, actually. Yeah, really thoroughly enjoyed life out there.
And the image I have of New Zealand, and this may be very uneducated, or the image that is given is that it's about 30 years behind the UK. Is that a fair reflection of it?
Well, in some ways, it's a little bit backwards, but then in other ways, it's really forwards. So they use virtually no cash at all. Even the smallest shops there wouldn't really use cash. Everybody's on card machines. And so I had a shock when I came back and tried to buy fish and chips over here, and they were like, "Oh no, cash only." And I'm like,
Right.
"Who carries cash? I haven't carried cash for years."
Well, we're
So
going that way now as well, aren't we? So
yeah, it's an
it's
interesting mix though. It took a pandemic to push us towards it.
yeah, yeah. I don't know whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, but yeah, everything's got to kind of go through the banks these days. So the banks are doing well because they get more money. But there we go. That is life. And so you were over there. You met your husband as well, I'm guessing.
I certainly did. We met at a singles ball actually, which sounds really improbable, but they had a singles night and they did a kind of speed dating. And both he and I are both really organised people. So when everybody else was milling around trying to find seats for speed dating, we'd sat down already and we had about 10 minutes conversation before the speed dating
Okay.
actually started.
And
So it was a bit of a cheat.
was it the scenario that you kind of had that moment to start with, and then you had to still go round the room and chat to all these other people, but all the time we're looking, going, oh, is he getting, is he connecting with that person or that person?
Well, I didn't follow him around the room too much, but I knew that there'd been a really good connection. But the rest of the night, he disappeared. And I only found out afterwards. He'd seen me dancing with the DJ, who was a fellow Sarok teacher and
Right.
somebody who I knew quite well at the time. And he'd been a bit scared because he couldn't dance. And he was kind of like, he didn't really want to approach me again, having seen me dancing, and for fear of being asked that he might get asked to dance.
Well, you are quite scary to ask to dance, if I'm honest with you. So
Thanks.
that's all right. Even I get scared to ask to dance with you.
Oh,
That's
no, no, no. I love dancing with everybody. Beginners.
oh.
Just yeah, if I can anybody who asks me, that's awesome.
So
But I do try and tone it down a bit so I
yeah.
don't scare people too much.
So can he dance now?
Hmm. He actually learned to dance salsa, and he's got 2 kids. And for his daughter's 21st birthday, he learned to dance salsa so he could surprise her for the party. And
Okay.
I went along with him for some of the lessons towards the end. And then I sneaked him into Sarok a bit, but he's not keen, shall we say. He can do it, and I have a 1 dance a year allowance, which generally gets used up at weddings.
Okay. So he's not a regular then. We can absolutely say that. So
Sadly,
yeah.
no.
No. So you've been to New Zealand, you've been across the UK. So where would you say would be your favourite place to visit then? You must have had some lovely holidays and stuff.
Oh gosh, too many. That's such a tough question. Um, I've loved exploring New Zealand while we've been over there. We did a lot of road trips out to some of the really remote beaches and parts, and it is beautiful. And it's the kind of thing where a busy day on the beach in New Zealand, you might have 20 people there. Um, there's just that kind of unspoiledness to it. But one of my favourite places growing up to visit was my cousin's house in the south of France. Um, I particularly enjoy being in France because I speak French, and she has this beautiful little house in a hamlet with a spring in the middle of the village where the locals go and get their water, and it's kind of got this
Oh.
rustic feel. And in my head, it's always sunny there. I know that's not true, but that
No.
kind of the impression from childhood holidays over there.
Well, chances are you probably went over in the summer when it was likely to be sunny. So each time you go there, it is always sunny. So that's a fair enough. Sorry, it cut out at one point. Did I hear you say you speak French?
I do, yes. I
You
lived for
do?
a year in France.
Okay.
So I did some teaching in a school and went to work at Disney actually for 3 months as well.
Okay. Very
In a
nice.
top secret occupation at Disney.
Oh, well, you have to reveal it now. I'm guessing that was a couple of years ago at least. So what was your top
Mm.
secret?
Oh well, you can't possibly say, but I was
Nobody's
certainly
listening to
involved
this. It's fine.
in looking after characters, shall we say.
Looking after, as in, were you a character?
I can't possibly comment, Richard. I probably signed some top secret document, but I had a summer job for 3 months at Disney.
Are you saying that Minnie and Mickey Mouse are not real people?
Of course, they're real.
Just
You
double
see them walking
checking.
around.
Well, that's it. Abs- Absolutely. So, well, the reason I was asking about the French part is that most people will know I have the most or very unusual surname, and somebody asked me yesterday, how do you pronounce it? And I gave my very English way of pronouncing it. So, somebody that can speak French, then how would you say my surname then?
I would say Beauvoisin,
Oh, well, that's all right. That's how I say it.
and it means
Just,
good neighbour.
it does
So
mean
that's
good
great.
neighbour. It means, well, I've always been told it means good or beautiful neighbour. I like the beautiful part. So
Yeah,
yeah.
you could go with handsome. That would be all right.
Yeah, handsome. Yeah, that'll do. Either of those. Got the hair spiking up today. I'm not quite sure why I've done that, but
You
yeah.
made an effort. I appreciate that.
I have made an effort. Last time I spoke to Veronica, she was completely dolled up, and I was just there in quite a casual polo shirt. So I thought I'll even put a shirt on. If it helps, I don't have any trousers on, but that's a different matter altogether. This is Zoom after all, so you only need to see from there downwards. So
You look decent to me. That's all. That's all we need to say.
try my very good. So being a vicar, being a mother, being a wife, what is the most daring thing that you've done then?
I was racking my brains because I am not like an adrenaline junkie at all. I've done some pretty interesting things, like I once drove a steam train dressed as a gnome. But
Okay, that's normal. Explain more.
so I was helping out with the Santa special railway trips on the North Yorkshire moors when we lived up in Yorkshire. And on the last run of the night, they let some of us onto the footplate to drive the engine for a bit.
Oh,
So, but we were still in all our gnome outfits, which was quite entertaining. So people on the level crossings saw these gnomes kind of leaning out driving the train, which would have been at all alarming for them. But I love roller coasters, so
okay.
I love the big rides.
What's your favourite
Um,
one then? Is it?
so probably the tallest one I've been on was the big one in Blackpool,
Yeah,
because I lived in Blackpool for a year, so I went there quite a lot.
yeah.
But we've done some of the Disney coasters and Alton Towers
I was going to say
and
you're
over
up near Alton Towers, aren't you? So you must have been there.
over the years we've done a few. I've done a few really good roller coasters, but I have never thrown myself out of a plane. Done a little bit of scuba diving, but yeah, nothing too exciting, I'm
Do you know, I
afraid.
found out a really interesting fact the other day was, the game, you may or may not know the game, where you put a broomstick in the ground and then you tilt your head over and you pop your head on the broomstick and then you kind of go
Run
round it
around.
and then you try and kick a football in a goal. And I think it's a hilarious thing to do at a garden party, that type of thing. And I had my son and a friend's son round, and the friend's son was 9 and my son was 17. And I was challenging them to go round, and they started off at 3 times and 5 times, 7. And my son got up to 17 times, and then he could still kick the football quite comfortably. I was like, wow, that's incredible. And I spoke to my friend who was round as well, and he said, the trouble is that as we get older, we can't do that as much. And I was like, really? So I went to do it. After 3 times, I actually fell off the broom. Let alone stand up and kick a football. I couldn't actually go round more than 3 times. And yet there's my son going round 17 times, just walking straight forwards. The reason I'm saying that, on a roller coaster, it may be, do you remember the Wurlitzers from cheap
Yeah,
roller fun fairs? As a kid, you can go round on those and it's absolutely fine. I look at those now and throw up.
I know. It's like it's something to do with your inner ear hardening,
Yeah.
which means you can't take the dizziness. So I can't do the round rides anymore, but the roller
No.
coasters are still good. So
Yeah, I like the roller
long live the
coaster.
roller coaster.
I like the roller coasters which are much more up and down type thing and quite quick. But yeah, the ones that just go round and round, the teacups, I look at those and think, oh, definitely can't do those at all, not in any way, shape, or form. Excuse me. So, last question I got for you on that little bit is describe your perfect day. What would your perfect day entitle? Now, I'm aware when I ask this question, okay, it's got to be quite a tricky one. If your husband listens to this or your children listen to this, they have to be included at some point. So, ignoring the fact, they have to be there. We accept that part.
Yeah, so I would like a lie in. That would be the
Okay.
first thing because 6:30 is a regular start in our household. And then I would like a really leisurely morning when I get to watch what I want to on television and have a nice coffee and maybe breakfast made for me. That would be
What would your
really
breakfast be?
something like smoked salmon on a bagel, that a
Okay.
bit of cream cheese or a bit of scrambled egg. That would just be ideal.
I hope your husband does listen to this. When was the last time you had smoked salmon with cream cheese on a bagel?
Oh, look, a long time ago. I made myself smoked salmon and scrambled egg on my birthday. My husband's actually got a chronic illness, and
Oh,
so
lovely.
he has a lot of fatigue, which means very often we don't kind of see him until middle of the afternoon. So
Okay.
anybody making breakfast at this point would be an
I'll
improvement.
just dig that hole.
No, 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 don't worry. Um, so so yeah, and then I would love to go off and do some dancing. Just with a room full of fabulous dancers and some great music. That would be a pretty awesome way to spend the afternoon. And then in the evening, I'd like a whole load of my favourite people round for dinner that I did not have to cook. And it would be a beautiful day. We'd be in the garden. And if I could move this house like 2 hours towards the coast, maybe finishing up with a bit of a bodyboard in the surf, that would be just awesome. As the Kiwis say, oh for awesome.
Oh, for awesome. Sorry,
Yeah,
that's my
starts with an
worst.
O over there.
Oh, okay. I'm trying to work
Awesome.
that out now. Awesome.
Awesome.
Yeah, I suppose it is. Yeah. I'm very famous for doing some incredible accents. I shan't try my Kiwi one though because it sounds very similar to the Australian one, and that's not great in the first place. So yeah.
Okay, you basically change all the E's to I's, and the I's to U's. So instead of a peg, you get a pig, and instead of fish, you get a fush.
I was wondering where you were going with that then when we started with an F word, but let's move on swiftly. I thought that was going to, yeah. Anyway, moving on. Good. So, just regarding dancing then, so you have a slightly different Sarok teacher background than everybody else. In fact, quite unique, I would have suggested. So, tell us a bit more about how you ended up on the stage.
So I started dancing at Oxford University, weirdly, when I got down there. Um, well, no, actually, Liverpool University, if I'm honest. A friend of mine coaxed me into going to a ballroom dancing class, and I was a bit kind of like, really? But we went, and I loved it. And so I stayed on. And then a year or so later, I went down to Oxford to do teacher training, although I didn't become a teacher, another story, and got straight onto their team because not because I was particularly good, but just because they'd lost a whole bunch of people. And they take it extremely seriously. So we were practicing 3 nights a week, competitions at the weekend. And so I went from not being able to dance much to really quite competent in some of the Latin dances in particular.
So, I think I
Long
know
story
the
short,
answer. Which was your favourite ballroom dance?
it was the jive,
Yeah,
always the
I
jive.
thought it might have been just a wild guess.
And then finished uni, moved to London, and a friend of mine said to me, you'd love this dance thing. It's on a Friday. You can come down with me." And I'm like, "Well, what thing?" He's like, "It's a jive thing." And I said, well, can you explain it? And he said, no, I can't. And I said, well, if you can't explain it, I'm not going. But I did. And so we rocked up and it was Ciroc.
Which venue was
And like
that?
that was the Casbah.
The Casbah. I thought it might have been.
Yeah,
Sweet.
the classic London venue and back in the day. And so and I got there and I thought, oh, this is easy. This is like ballroom without the footwork. And in fact, I can make up my own footwork. So I started dancing there for a while. But the journey into teaching took a while because occasionally, if somebody hadn't turned up and I was around, somebody on stage might ask me up to demo out of the blue. And the first time it happened, I was like a rabbit in the headlights. I looked so startled. I was a bit kind of like, a bit stiff and a bit kind of scared. But then by the time I got to Oxford, I'd been dancing Ciroc for quite a while. And you were just about to start a venue. And you said, oh, will you come and help start the venue? And I was kind of like, yeah, I'm up for that. And so I kind of really learned proper Ciroc, like how to teach Ciroc with you while I was demoing, because I heard you say all the words so many times. And in fact, some of your habits are still with me
Oh
now.
no.
And
Do
they're
I want
not
to?
good because I got told off for them at the Ciroc
Did
audition.
you? Well, there's no surprise there. So let's go down this rabbit hole. So what habits have I taught you that aren't good ones then? We'll decide whether
so,
they are good ones or not. Let's go for them.
so apparently, saying and the move looks something like
Like
this
this.
is not something you should say anymore, because you
No.
have to say the move will look like this. You have to
Yeah.
be sure about it.
Of course.
So there's some things like that, and also there's some old carryovers from the former Ciroc style that are sometimes hard to shift. Like I still very occasionally find myself doing a semicircle with the arm to start, which we taught originally
Back in the day,
back in the day, which is now all gone,
it
all
has.
gone.
Do you know, even now, on the odd occasion, if I've got a right to right hold, I still kind of go like that and push away. You know, and I do this every day of my life, and still to me, it's still ingrained there from 25 years ago.
Oh, it's the muscle memory. It's very hard to share.
Yeah, it's. I
So
often
I
say
think
to people, it's really difficult to change habits. Much more difficult to change a habit than create a new one. And yeah, getting rid of that one, even for me, is quite tricky.
so I demoed for you for a long time,
Hmm.
taxied occasionally, and then eventually moved to London, where I also demoed and taxied, and used to teach some sort of bits and pieces here and there without being fully qualified. Back in the day, things were a little bit more kind of a bit laid back. And then, of course, moving out to New Zealand, you and I talked about maybe getting qualified at some point, but because I was always moving, there just wasn't a good time for it didn't really work for the franchise at the
No.
time. Um, Moved to New Zealand, started dancing out there a bit, found a partner, and we were doing a little bit of competition work. And then me and my partner were talking, and we approached one of the franchise owners over there about potentially training together. And they actually said yes straight away. So things over there are very different. They don't audition you because they know you.
Is
Because
it a
it's small.
much smaller scene than I'm guessing?
Yeah, and if the franchise owner is also a teacher, then they can teach you to teach. And
Okay.
so I learned Kiwi style lessons,
And how
and
different is that to the UK style then?
um, they're a little bit more funny on footwork. Actually, there was a lot more footwork in New Zealand than there is, although certainly I'd learned first time round. And the really tricky thing was like the names of the moves were not necessarily the same.
Oh, okay.
So they'd say, we're now going to do and I'd be like, I have no clue what that is. And then they'd do it and I'd be like, oh, that's something else. So some of my Ciroc terminology is slightly unusual now as well.
Oh. So you taught over there for how long?
Oh, a few years. Um, kind of everything got interrupted by the arrival of the baby, and then we accidentally adopted a teenager 3 months after the baby arrived. Um,
How do you accidentally adopt a teenager?
well, she came for a week's respite,
Okay,
and then she never left.
fair
And
enough.
after about a year, I was kind of like, maybe we should have some paperwork about this.
Yeah.
And so we sort of did the formal. We got guardianship at that point and day-to-day care. And so between the two things, because obviously she had some personal needs as well, new baby, personal needs, full on job. Yeah, I kind of dropped out of everything for quite a while.
That's fair enough.
Um, and then started gradually teaching back. And actually, I had a great teaching job towards the end. We used to teach once a month for a party night,
Ah,
which is just about the best fun teaching job you can have.
yeah, it's literally none of the hassles and all of the fun. Just
Yeah,
go and teach a fun class.
and that suited me just fine until I got back to the UK. And we just moved on this huge international move. It was the end of the first week. We were in a rented house at the time. And I noticed that there was a Ciroc 10 minutes down the road. And I said to my mum, who was helping me, because my husband hadn't even made it over from New Zealand at that point, I said to her, would it be all right if you stay in with the kids? Because I'd really like a night out just to, let my hair down, forget some of
Yeah.
the hassles.
Some me time.
Yes. So I rocked up to the venue and I thought, it's probably polite to let them know I'm a teacher, because I don't really know the protocol here.
And you don't
Um,
want to pay.
no, well, I did pay actually, but I sort of said to them, hi, I'm just moved from New Zealand, and they're like, oh, we'd like to talk to you afterwards. And I was like, oh, okay then. So I had a good night. Halfway through the evening, I went out to sort of talk to them, and they're like, how do you feel about teaching? We've got this venue in Lincoln we need a teacher for. And I was like, I've just literally got here 2 minutes ago, but I can think about it. And so we started the process, and then we found out that I had to re-audition and retrain to teach English Ciroc, and start the whole thing again, which we were really surprised about because we
Yeah.
thought, it's the same sort of franchise. So I've had to kind of retrain. So
So how did you find your audition then? Because that must have been quite strange, already having had years worth of experience and then being auditioned again.
it was weird, but it didn't stop me being nervous. I tell you, I think I was more nervous because I'm like, I'm a teacher. What if I fail? It will be
Yeah.
really embarrassing.
Yeah. The fear of
Uh,
failure on that one is strong.
yeah, and you kind of felt like I should be outperforming everybody because they're expecting me to, be this teacher who's already qualified.
Well, I
Um,
guess it went all right because you obviously are a rock teacher.
yes, yeah, it went fine, and I think the main thing was relearning the UK style.
Yeah.
They like everything a certain way so that it's instantly recognizable as Ciroc. And so I've had to unlearn some bad habits possibly and relearn some new ways of
Well,
talking about things.
we'll call them different habits. They're not necessarily
Yes,
bad.
alternatives.
I always like to describe any dance form as an art form, and dance is an art. So there is no right or wrong way. The jive is no better or worse than a cha-cha-cha or a waltz. They are just different ways of doing something. So yeah, whether it is a semicircle or a straight push back, is one better than the other? Depends on what your opinion is in the first place. So there's no
It's all
right
in
or
the
wrong answer.
interpretation.
It is interpretation, yeah, and you know, I, the way in which I teach now is completely different than when I was on stage with you. Um, and things develop and things move on. So it's yeah, I don't think it's ever going to be the same, and it shouldn't ever be the same as it was 5, 10 years ago. Things always need to develop. So yeah, it might be that New Zealand is now different than when you left it. It's a
Yeah, definitely.
possibility. It is
Oh,
a
they change
possibility.
things all the time. Like we love changing the beginners' moves, don't we? Every now and again, we kind of give them a bit of a dust off, and we love changing little bits of footwork here or this, the way we do things. So the dance evolves, and that's a good thing.
Yeah.
Um, it's just about evolving along with it.
Yeah, and that's the difficult part. I think there's something like 150 Ciroc teachers. So from an administration perspective, changing one bit of footwork, and then getting that message to everybody and retraining everybody is quite a challenge. Obviously, in New Zealand, if it's a much smaller sort of entity and the franchisee kind of does it their way anyway, then it's not such a big thing. You can kind of move with the times and be easy. Whereas, when you've got a juggernaut of Ciroc and all the different franchises and all of the different areas, then yeah, that's a much more challenging thing for the lovely Tim Sant to try and do. So, but that's his job. I'll let him have that job. It's not my job. Yeah, it definitely isn't. But so how would you describe yourself as a Ciroc teacher then? What sort of style? So I know for Paul Brooks, he said, he was a classic Ciroc teacher. Everything's kept quite fun. Veronica was quite quirky in her sorts of ways. So what about yourself?
I probably pretty laid back. I think one thing I have got from New Zealand is a bit of the Kiwi kind of laid backness. We're there to make it easy for people. And my main goal, especially for the beginners, is to get people dancing and to give them some confidence that they're going to get this. I won't worry about the detail for the beginners. It's just like, let's get everybody moving through the move, get some confidence that you can do this and you can leave dancing, which is the real key thing, I think, to helping people want to come back. But alternatively, with the intermediates, I'm probably a bit more of a stickler because I love the styling and I love seeing moves finished well, and especially intermediates where they've got a really good grasp of how to do things. It's like, well, okay, how do we do things better now? So I'm probably ultra laid back with beginners and a bit more kind of, okay, intermediates, let's look at how we're moving things forward now.
Okay, so is it almost like the glasses come off and you're like, right, now you lot, or maybe the
I'm going to
glasses
use
go
my
on for intermediates, you
teacher voice.
take them off for beginners so you can't see anyone. You're there going, yeah, that'll do, that's fine. And then
Yeah, you look great.
intermediates, right.
Yeah, but overall, I'm kind of one of these people who just like way encouraging. You got this, guys. Let's do that.
I can imagine you being a lovely teacher. I've never seen you teach, which is a real sad thing.
Wow.
But yeah, you never know.
Yeah, that's true.
I'll have to have you down. It's quite strange. Most people I have seen in one way or another, but obviously you're fairly new to teaching in the UK, an experienced teacher overall. But yeah, I've never seen you teach. So it's, yeah, I've seen you dance. I was just thinking back to the fact that you mentioned that jive was your favourite ballroom style of dance, and my favourite style of dance these days, and has been for quite a long time, is very much the slower end of things, and just find it flabbergasting actually that we matched pretty well as a dance partnership, because you're very kicky flicky, and if I did that I'd fall over and keel in a lump on the floor. So yeah, it's quite amazing that we actually matched at all, really.
It's probably quite good for us because I mean, I certainly was able to use some of the other ballroom dances to help smooth out my style when I needed to. And this, I don't get me wrong, I do enjoy a slow dance, but for me, a slow dance, it's almost easier because you have the time to express. You've got the space to move and to glide and to ooze through the moment.
Yeah.
But for me, the skill is in a fast dance. It's a lot, because you don't have the thinking time. And you have to react and you have to get the same amount of style packed in to a much shorter time frame. I think I love the fast dance because it's a challenge. It's a challenge to do it well.
Yeah.
And so, a lot of my ballroom jive stuff comes through there, and a little bit of Lindy Hop and goodness knows what else.
Well, you're light on your feet. I'm certainly post-lockdown much heavier on my feet. It's,
I think we all are.
yeah, I think we all have been, that's for sure. At some point it will come off. It's just not this point. But yeah, hopefully when we all
I'm
get
with
back
you.
to dancing properly, we can all go out and rather than sitting and watch TV, actually go out and dance and all of that. So hopefully that time is coming soon. But yeah, so one of the bits that people love to hear then is your most embarrassing moment on stage.
It wasn't in a stage. It was a smaller Ciroc group. We didn't have a stage in the venue. So we sort of used to teach in the middle of the circle,
Right.
kind of more workshop style. And I was dancing with a guy who was not my regular partner and who had a bit of a mouth on him. And all I can say is that he said one of the most inappropriate things inadvertently, which caused the entire class to melt down and myself. And in fact, we were all laughing so hard. And every time he opened his mouth to try and make it better, something worse came out.
So he was on mic as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because the way it works in New Zealand is generally you have two teachers for the class. So the bloke teaches the bloke side,
Yep.
the woman teaches the woman's side, which has made me a little bit lazy on teaching some of the blokes' moves, I must admit. So that's something I've had to step up.
Yeah.
But we were just creased. I mean, it wasn't a big class, but we just couldn't get it together. And so it was pretty much the end of the class there and then. Like, we did not finish. But I
That's
figured
it.
people had a good time inadvertently.
Well,
So,
do you know what I've really loved? And, for those that are listening won't unfortunately be able to see this, but, when we were doing kind of the first half of our little chat, it was quite, you were very normal and everything was lovely. As soon as you've actually started speaking about dancing and Sarok, and you have literally come to life. Your whole face is lit up, and it's amazing to see. And that's kind of the feeling that you obviously give to your class, in that you are putting across all of those feelings, and everybody is leaving with that same feeling, which is amazing. Whether they can dance or not, sometimes, as far as I'm concerned, isn't always that important. But as long as they're enjoying themselves, and it looks like they will do definitely in your classes, which is good. So every
yeah.
Tuesday night at Lincoln or wherever it is, I don't even know what night Lincoln is actually.
It's a Wednesday, and we're
Wednesday
kind of
night.
hoping we're still not back up and running. We're just
No,
still waiting for the because we have a lot of single folk, and so the we could try workshops, but it's not as easy for people. So we want to launch when everyone can come back.
that's fair
So
enough.
we're just waiting for the government now to say, "Yay, go ahead."
Which hopefully will be in the not too distant future. Right, we're moving on to music. So I asked all my guests the same three questions each time: which is their favourite song to dance to listen to, and what's their most important track to them. So I've just got to do some jiggery pokery and hope that this bit works properly. So the first one is, what's your favourite song to dance to then?
Well, as you know, I like fast music for the challenge, and
Yeah,
so one of my and I like a little bit of rock and roll, bit of retro. So one of my favourite tracks is Boogie Woogie Bugle Boy, because it is full on, and you need a lot of energy for it. So,
I'm guessing that's the Andrew Sisters version, isn't it?
well, any version is fine, but
Well,
yep, the Andrew Sisters is great.
we're going for the Andrew Sisters, so we'll just have a quick listen to it.
He was a famous trumpet man from our Chicago way. He had a boogie style that no one else could play. He was the top man at his craft. But then his number came up and he was gone with the draft.
Anyway, we'll go away from that for a second. We can't play too long because of copyright and all of that. But yes, that's Boogie Woogie Bugle Boy.
It's all about the Boogie Woogie.
All about the Boogie Woogie. I was just having a look at it there, 170 beats per minute.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm not sure my old body's going to cope with that anymore.
It was so funny at the audition. They play you a slow rock track and a faster rock track. And they said to me afterwards, yeah, you kind of dance the same to both of them. I was like, that's your fast track wasn't fast.
No. And do you know what?
Like,
Probably the slow track wasn't slow either. But yeah, I remember doing at a competition at one point, and they said, this is your slow track. And I knew the track. And, slow tracks for me are between kind of 90 and 100 beats per minute. This one was still 115 beats per minute, which is what I use for lesson speed. And that's what they class as their slow track. So yeah, that's one of those things. Anywho, so your favourite song to listen to then?
yeah, so this is a bit of classic Queen. If you're feeling down, the song Don't Stop Me Now is going to put a smile on your face, regardless. When I was in sixth form, we threw a comic relief event, which I was running. And part of it was a group of guys got up and sang this with harmonies. And it was amazing. It just like lifted the whole school. And ever since then, I've absolutely loved this song. Not something I would have particularly grown up listening to, but once I discovered that song, it was kind of like, yeah, if you want to get ready for a good night out dancing, pop that on before you go, and it'll give you a lift.
Oh, let's have a quick listen.
'Cause I'm having a good time, having a good time. I'm a shooting star leaping through the sky like a tiger, defying the laws of gravity. I'm a racing car passing by.
Lovely. The lovely Queen there, and Don't Stop Me Now. Although you thought it was called Mr. Fahrenheit, and it
I
confused
did.
me.
I
Yeah.
don't know why I thought it was called Mr. Fahrenheit.
Well, they do say
Just,
Mr. Fahrenheit in the song.
yeah, they do. So I don't know where I got that from.
No, no, it's a great track. As I said to you, I do have memories of that track when we, myself and Zoe, used to compete, and we ended up coming second to a cabaret that had that track. So every time I hear that track now, I get transported back to that moment.
Oh,
And
almost.
yeah, thanks for that. Cheers.
Choose better music, Richard. That's what it's about. It wasn't about the dancing, it was about the music.
Do you know what? you're probably actually quite right. The song we chose was, or we had two tracks that we chose, and yeah, maybe they didn't connect as much as they could have. It's a life lesson in learning that skill.
There
And
we
your
go.
last track then. So this is the track that's had kind of the most impact on you, strongest memories, most important track to you.
Yeah, so when I first moved to New Zealand, I was sort of a single person away from everybody. I had some very distant relatives over there, but I'd never really met them. And I got there, and somebody from the church gave me a card with a poem, as I thought, written in. And it basically said, "Welcome home. You know, we're out here on the edge of the world, but we've made a space for you." And it was a beautiful poem. And it wasn't until some time afterwards that I heard it on the radio, and I thought, that's not a poem, that's a song. And it was by a Kiwi songwriter called Dave Dobbin, who we also used for our wedding dance, but a different track of his. Just an amazing singer-songwriter. So if you're interested in listening to some Kiwi music, really recommend it. And so it was the song Welcome Home, because whenever I go back to New Zealand, it's like, I know I have a second home there. I'm now a citizen of New Zealand as well. I became a Brewi, which is a kind of a British Kiwi. Some time ago, and so I have dual nationality, and it reminds me that there's a second home out there, and these were kind of some of the first words I really heard welcoming me into New Zealand.
Let's have a little listen.
Welcome home from the bottom of my heart. Welcome home.
Oh, that sounds like a lovely track.
It's awesome. You should go away and Google it and listen to the rest.
Yeah. And you know, when people talk about poetry, because I have the pleasure of writing some poetry myself on the odd occasion, but I also write quite a lot of songs, and I write, you know, and in that you are effectively writing poetry. You know, if you look at John Lennon, Imagine, for instance, that's an amazing poem. Yeah, poetry and song lyrics, I'd say, are one and the same. So I don't think it's a wrong thing you thought it was a poem. It's just words put to music.
Yeah, it's just I just hadn't really thought about it as a song. And I didn't know anything about Kiwi music when I got out there, but I've really come to love some of the artists, and went to the Vodafone Music Awards over there, which was just an amazing night. They had Lord and some of the other Kiwi bands, 660, and some of the more rap style artists who, you know, we have an expression, wilt famous in New Zealand, which kind of.
Well, do you know, the only New Zealand band I know of is Crowded House. You know, and I used to be a big fan of them. I actually remember going to see them in concert many, many moons ago when it was the original band lineup as well. And that's when both Neil and Tim Finn were both in the band at that point. And I didn't pick up my guitar for 2 years afterwards because they were so perfect that I thought I can never do what they're doing. I then went to see the Commitments musical a couple of years later and thought I can do anything they're doing because it wasn't quite the same standard. But yeah, the Crowded House are an amazing band.
Yeah, and probably them and Lord have had the most success, you know, internationally. But we've some good people that just probably don't have the profile.
It's not an easy place to get out of or get promotion from New Zealand, is it? I suggest, but I mean, with the internet these days, I'd have thought it'd be easier, but not that easy to do a European tour, for instance, because it takes a while to get here. But yeah, we're on to our quick fire round. We're flying through. I know. So as always, I'm going to ask the same questions. I may change them in time, but not today. You've got the same questions, okay? So I'm going to line them up here for you, okay? Right. So, favorite ice cream?
Caramel.
Fair enough. Are you clean or messy?
Bit messy.
Bit messy. Fair enough. I know the answer to this one. Love or hate roller coasters?
Love, love, love.
So, excluding social media, so no Twitter, Facebook, anything like that, what's the phone app you use the most?
Games.
You can't just say games. That's too broad. What game?
Mario Kart. Mario Kart Tour.
Kart.
Like a bit of Mario Kart.
I did start playing it, and then I often play my phone late at night, and I found Mario Kart Tour too exciting. Didn't help me get to sleep.
It's not the most soothing thing before bedtime.
Not really, no. But after that, so I play more sedate games. But there we go. Coffee or tea?
Tea. Red Bush.
Any sugar?
No.
No sugar. Sweet enough and all of that.
No sugar, no caffeine.
No sugar. So did you say decaf tea then?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
I don't need it. I just have enough energy for life.
That's fair enough. Favorite TV program?
Currently Grey's Anatomy, doing a little bit of a retro catch up on Disney.
Okay, fair enough. And if you came back, this is such a weird question. If you came back in your next life as an animal, I shouldn't maybe speak to a next life with reverence, but never mind. Which one would you be and why?
Oh, cat. I love the lifestyle. Sunshine, cuddles, crashing out, eating. I reckon that would be a pretty great lifestyle.
That sounds like your favorite day again.
It does, doesn't it? That's pretty much sums it up. I could just have a day as a cat.
Have a day as a cat, having some smoked salmon on a bagel with some cream cheese on it as well. Anyway,
Nice.
so yeah, last thing I've got to say is I mentioned at the very beginning that that you were kind of half of the reason that Srock in this area still exists. And yeah, I mean, I still remember the time back in Srock, Swindon, we had about 30 people, this at Gorse Hill Working Men's Club. And yourself and all the guys we were bringing over from Oxford, you just worked the room beyond anything. And you gave people such a lot of hope and encouragement that it meant that the night survived, if I'm honest with you. There's only so much that the teach can do. And yeah, yourself as a person has definitely helped this whole region be what it is in dancing wise. So so a big thank you from myself and also from every other dancer. They don't know about that part of you. But for me, I know how much of a part you played in the early days, because when a venue is on the, borderline of whether it will survive or not, having those nights when you got extra people coming over and then you all work the room made a huge difference. So so a big thank you for that from me. So
Quite all right. It's quite funny because in the early days, of course, the entire staff were trainee vicars pretty much.
yeah,
All the taxi dancers, the door, myself. We used to
absolutely.
take a car of trainee vicars to go and run Ciroc on an evening. It was
Yeah,
but it was a good night out.
it was a
And
great
the
night
people
out.
and the Swindonites were fantastic. Such great dancers as well. So we
Yeah,
used to have a really good time.
yeah, very dodgy venue. You had to hold your nose to go in the toilet. But the
Just
actual
didn't
dance
go.
hall, yeah, the dance hall was just was amazing. So so
Yeah.
yeah, it is all good. Well, Sarah, thank you ever so much for your time today. We will see you again very soon. This has been Life Off the Stage. Me, Richard Bovesan, and today's guest has been Sarah Patten. Thank you very much.